That was the toughest, probably 6 months professionally for me in my career, just trying to work out how to sell. A lot of drive, perseverance, a lot of hunger in the team.
So does AI replace a salesperson?
We know how people sell, and we know how a particular company is selling. We know what their ICP is. We know the types of people they're speaking to. So we can help guide our salespeople through the products. Your sales intelligence tool, which gives you the data, external data, basically to feed your sales team. That's the first step of the sales process. So if you get that wrong, you pretty much the whole rest of your process is wrong.
Welcome to the B2B Sales Blueprint by Firmable. I'm Paul Perrett, co-founder and co-CEO of Firmable, and I'll be your host. Never thought I'd actually be sitting here hosting a podcast. I just never really imagined that. But having been immersed in the sales and go-to-market ecosystem for the last, few years, I've become increasingly frustrated that as a sales community and a go-to-market community, we're not sharing our stories. We're not talking about what works, and more importantly, what doesn't work. So this podcast is designed to tackle that. So we are going to hear there's some great stories out there in our ecosystem, and this podcast is designed to hear from them. So today, I thought for our first podcast, makes sense to start with my long-term partner in crime, Leigh Jasper. Leigh and I have worked together for many, many years, and over the last few years, we've been working together with Firmable. So welcome, Leigh.
Thank you. Good to be here. Am I first up because I've made more mistakes than most in sales?
Probably. So, very, very quick bio. Many people will know of Leigh. So Leigh was one of the co-founders of Aconex. Aconex started back in 2000. Was one of the very, very early, kind of B2B SaaS businesses, almost the first B2B SaaS business that came out of Australia. Grew to over 1,000 people, 250 million in revenue. Ultimately sold to Oracle in 2018. Great journey, which we'll hear a little bit more about. And then since then, Leigh's gone on to do a whole range of other stuff, contributed really actively to the tech ecosystem. I think founded a couple of venture funds, been on boards, chaired Lord Vic, done a whole heap of stuff, giving back to the ecosystem. So that's you. Is there any of that bio that I've missed?
That's pretty good. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm just kind of highlighting all the good bits.
Lots of bad bits.
No, so I guess you're really well known, I guess, as an entrepreneur and someone who is very passionate about the tech ecosystem. But for those that have worked with you closely, know you're really deeply passionate about sales. So I guess I just wanted to start by telling us about your personal sales journey and kind of what informed your view on selling.
Well, I think it's born out of necessity. When we were building Aconex, there's only two things that really matter in a business: your product and how you get it to market, how people buy it. And we built a product back at Aconex. It looked pretty good, but then kind of looked around and realised somebody would have to go out and sell it.
Yep.
And that person was me. Yep. So, but that was the toughest, probably 6 months professionally for me in my career, just trying to work out how to sell, learning. I'd been at McKinsey, and you kind of do a little bit of selling an idea or talking to your client, but not the same as hardcore sales. And this was back when there was no Firmable back then. There was no data. The way I'd get phone numbers or get customers would be to look at cranes, because we were selling construction tech. So write a list, do cold calling. I did a lot. So from cold calling to doing meetings, and worked out how to sell, worked out how to position, and tell a customer about your product, and ideally get to a close on that.
And I guess it was not just you out there selling. I guess you have to, like all founders, you've got to learn how to build a sales organization. So how do you transition from I can sell to building a sales organization?
Probably didn't transition quick enough. So I was, first salesperson, first sales manager effectively.
Yep.
Started to build a team. And then we did get to a point where a number of the salespeople coming in clearly knew more about sales than I did. And it made sense for me to go, you know a lot more about this than I do, so why don't you lead it? But clearly I kept supporting it and was part of that. We're also probably a little slow getting marketing going at Aconex. It's very much sales-led, but eventually we built a whole go-to-market function from demand generation in an enterprise sales environment, B2B enterprise sales, with marketing all the way through sales and then through to customer success.
Yeah, okay. Now, so we'll get to Firmable in a second. But one thing that I've heard a lot of people ask you is, you've been really successful. You've great. You've done really well with Aconex. You're doing a lot of interesting things post Aconex, but you decided to go again. What on earth possessed you?
Maybe a little bit of insanity, but I ultimately love building businesses. So to be able to build another company, also the people you get to work with, not just because you're sitting in the room, but being able to work with great people, but also solve a problem. And we saw, I mean, we'll come to the Firmable story in a minute, but being able to solve a real problem for customers and to be able to then build a business around that was the...
And have you enjoyed it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So while I do a number of things going, they're all becoming less and less, and stepped off a number of boards, and Firmable's becoming the main, by far the main gig for me, and essentially full time on Firmable.
Awesome.
And loving it.
Yeah.
It's every business has its challenges, and not every day is a great day, but overall it's an amazing journey. And doing a second time round, probably a little less emotional day to day, because you're going to ride with the ups and the downs.
Interesting. I'll come back to that one. So why Firmable? What was the early vision? What was the opportunity? What was the catalyst? Like, kind of paint the picture for the audience as to why Firmable.
So a couple of things. One was wanted to build another business, so sort of knocking around a few ideas and having conversations with people like you and others.
Yep.
And then the opportunity to solve a problem. And the problem that we saw was that the companies we're investing in, so through our venture investments, most of them B2B SaaS, all had a problem with data for their sales teams. And so it felt like the global providers were just not servicing Australia very well. And if nothing else, we solve a problem for our investee companies, so for people that we know. And if they've got a problem, it's likely a lot of other people have that problem. So we thought that there was a big market opportunity in providing a much higher quality data set for Australian companies.
It seems like that it was a solved problem, but was it?
Well, I think a couple of things have changed. So one, and we'll probably come to the whole AI story, but it hadn't been solved that well. And I think if you look at the global data providers that are out there, sales intelligence providers, they, in our view, hadn't solved it very well, because our investee companies weren't really liking the products, weren't using them. And the other thing with sales is your sales intelligence tool, which gives you the data, external data to basically to feed your sales team. That's the first step of a sales process. So if you get that wrong, you pretty much the whole rest of your process is wrong. So it doesn't matter how good your CRM is if you're not getting good data, external data in the front end of your sales process. So we felt that was a pretty important problem to solve for the companies we'd invested in, and therefore for the broader market.
And so how did you think about doing it differently?
Well, as a SaaS business, I mean, Aconex was sort of phase one SaaS. The first thing was we don't build everything. We just build what we have to build. So we've got 40 or 50 different SaaS products plugged into the stack, but then really focusing on what matters. So in our case, that was getting the highest quality data we could from a range of different sources and assembling that into a data set that gave people much higher precision than they'd ever seen before in the Australian market.
So that kind of local kind of context, local focus, was that the key thing that resonated early on, do you think? Or?
Well, I think ultimately we believe we can build, and we will be building a business globally, but you have to be able to service each market with the highest quality data. And so and it's a big problem to try and do that globally from day one. So we figured that Australia was a market that had a problem to serve today. We could afford to, and frankly, when you start, you have to be able to afford to bring the data set together. And it was we'd reduce the size of the problem, the cost of the problem, by putting our arms around Australia and saying, well, that's the market we'll start with, and then we'll do market by market after that.
You've got a product, you've got an idea, raise some money, you've got a product, you now need to start selling it or getting it out to market. Like, how did that work? Like, because so many founders I've spoken to and you've spoken to, that's where do you start?
Well, and very different from Aconex too, because they're very different products, so we can sort of compare that. But look, to start with, there was networks, and that's always a good place to start. So we of course know companies are trying to sell, technology companies, so speaking to the CROs and the CEOs of those companies, and these were mostly startups. And then it pretty quickly gets out that we didn't have to have many conversations to find that everybody's having the same problem. And we'd get everybody from some large companies, like KPMG was an early company to start using. You go, well, if KPMG is going to use it, then there's definitely something here.
Yeah. And so I vividly recall the early sales leaderboard.
maybe that was on top for a while.
So maybe for context, explain what I'm referencing.
Yeah, so we track everything, and Paul can talk about this, but the one difference I think compared to Aconex, we had to work out everything as we were going at Aconex. This time around, we we kind of had the sales playbook. We knew how to think about building a team, how to think about what you're tracking. Very early brought in SDR. So everything was done earlier than most startups because, well, we should know something about it, and I think we largely do. But yeah, tracking everything from day one. So of course, the first thing we had was a sales leaderboard, and if there's anything tracked in any competition, I'll try and try and win it.
There was back in the early days, there was no sales team. There was Leigh, myself, and Tara. So,
or try to sell.
Tara, our CRO. So, and we were out there in market. We used to get some inbound leads, and we used to divvy them up one by one. So,
and call them.
And
and the great thing about Firmable, again, compared to Aconex, Aconex was a hard sell, but Firmable pretty much sells itself. So we didn't have to do very long demos. People had a problem, they could see almost from the minute you showed them the system, this was going to be helpful for them in their sales process.
Yeah, so there was a very brief period where Leigh was on top of the leaderboard.
Was on top of the leaderboard until the same thing like Aconex is we did find that very quickly we hired people that were way better at selling than me.
Yeah, so, but I guess when you compare those two experiences, so the early days selling Aconex and the early days building Firmable, what was different and because they were, I guess separated by 20 years, I guess, what was the...
I mean, Aconex had no sales toolkit. I mean, the best we had was a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And this is almost it was pre-Salesforce. Salesforce wasn't even in the market at that point. So the concept of CRM was even pretty new back then. And of course now, 20 years later, the entire tool set's changed. You still got your CRM, multiple different CRMs, a few big ones like, HubSpot, Salesforce, etc., Dynamics, but then the tool set around that is much broader than it ever was, whether it's outreach tools, of course, sales intelligence, which we'll talk a lot about from a Firmable context, but there's a broader tool set. Also, the roles are split up more. So back 20 years ago, as a salesperson, you pretty much did everything. You do your own calls, set up your own meetings. The concept of SDRs was probably still pretty new, certainly in the Australian context. But what we did at Aconex was sort of gradually build out all those functions based on a probably US model of selling, so with SDRs, AEs, etc. And we've done that almost straight out of the gate at Firmable, so being able to build the structure of the team almost day one, and also then tracking and controlling everything. So the metrics that we learnt back in the day, and again, SaaS was new when we started Aconex, so LTV to CAC, all these sort of different sales metrics, return metrics weren't really in the market then, but now, of course,
And then the other question that I get asked, I know you get asked a lot, one of the hardest things when you're scaling in those early days is how to hire great sales and go-to-market professionals. It gets easier as you get bigger, but what's the key to hiring those really early kind of salespeople?
I probably should ask you this, given you tripped over one of our sales leaders. So, part of it's finding great people and people that I think would have a hunger to learn, young and hungry, if you can put it that way. But our sales team they're all up and comers. They're growing fast. They're learning quickly. We've built a team that blends a bit of experience, but with a lot of drive, perseverance, a lot of hunger in the team. And so finding the right type of person, I think, is way more important than skill, experience. If you put it that way.
So that's really interesting because, sometimes there's a tendency, and we've made this mistake in the past together, sometimes there's a tendency to go, well, I really want someone who's done it before, who's been on the journey. How do you balance that done it before versus someone who's, how do you think about that?
Well, and we talk about mistakes. So some of the biggest hiring mistakes I've made has been hiring sales leaders is in the Aconex days where we'd this happened a few times, hire somebody that looked amazing on paper, amazing track record, maybe it worked at a big company, and they just weren't the fit for a startup culture like we had at Aconex, even though they were enterprise sales. Same here, it's just getting the right type of people. It's all about attitude, behaviours, more so than experience. And I think sometimes experience can work against you. If you're used to selling enterprise, being able to move into a high-paced, high-velocity environment like we have in Firmable can be pretty tricky for people.
Yeah, and I guess for context, probably should have. So Firmable's been in the market for how long now?
About 18 months.
So 18 months. When did we launch? March 24, is that right? I guess that's March 24.
Yeah. So we launched with we had a few beta customers, but launched, and look, it took a little while to get a bit of traction, but then a couple of things have happened for us. I think, there's a problem to solve, which we talked about earlier, but as we got a lot of word of mouth and people talking to each other. So as we've been building, that's been accelerating. And of course, we're running an outbound process as well. So not just relying on inbound, but also building an outbound SDR process. And part of how we're thinking about the team is using SDRs as a bit of a funnel for the rest of our sales roles. So we're already promoting, a number of SDRs have already been promoted to AE roles, and that's within 18 months of getting into the market.
So we were kind of the end of 24, we'd probably had a couple hundred customers, getting some momentum, but it didn't feel kind of super consistent.
And then seemed to take off Feb, March this year.
So
why?
Exactly.
I'd love to know the exact reason. Sometimes things happen, but I think there's a bit of referenceability. We started to pick up bigger customers, so not just 1-2 user accounts, multi-user accounts. I think we were able to swap out some of our global competitors, and so that made it a little easier for us. But a lot of our customers are also net new users of sales intelligence. So the amount of customers that come in, we've got a Slack feed every day of the deals we're signing, and the great thing is just seeing deals tick over all day, literally all day. There's deals ticking through on Slack. The team might laugh. I'm not the best user of Slack, but there's one channel I do watch, and that's the deal flow. But just these customers, some of them you've never heard of. There's Riverina Workwear, for example. So I've never bought workwear from anybody in Wagga.
It's cool. You never bought workwear.
Not recently, but yes, no, I'm not a big workwear buyer, but so a company from Wagga that I haven't heard of. We've got, all sorts of, there's recruiters, there's commercial real estate, and some of them you have heard of because they're bigger companies, but then a whole lot of smaller companies selling B2B services, office supplies, printing companies like Epson, Canon. Just the range of customers is incredible. And probably a third of our customers thereabouts, I think it's about a third are swapping out a competitor, but about 2/3 are companies have not used a sales intelligence tool before.
I'm fascinated by that because what is it? So you've got this switch out motion and there's a well-worn path, and let's come back to that switch out motion in a second, but there's a well-worn path to building businesses through switch outs.
Yep.
But what's the secret to expanding a market? Because there's very few kind of sales go-to-market platforms that have actually got into the mass market. What do you think's happening there?
Well, I think our outbound motion is going after certainly the bigger end of the market. That's helping. But I think a lot of it's people have a genuine need and we're servicing that need. So a lot of our inbound is people that are looking for, and it might just be as simple as looking for a business list or I need a set of customers to sell to. So we're finding those people are coming to us and then we're able to convert them pretty quickly. And I think sales is, people talk as well. So I think within the sales community I don't know how the hell Riverina Workwear heard about us, but somebody somewhere has spoken.
Them up and ask them.
We probably should ask them. But we've got customers that I wouldn't have thought in the consumer side, and they're not using us for their consumer business, but like a Medibank and a Virgin Australia are using us to sell corporate accounts. So we're getting some of the largest companies in Australia and the smallest companies in Australia and everything in between. So it's quite remarkable how broad a product like Firmable with high quality data, the ability to sell and signals on all the data, we can talk about that, but just really helping salespeople be more effective.
So for context, just maybe clarify the size of the deals and the sales motion. So it sounds like there's some mixture of bigger deals versus smaller deals.
Yeah, so a lot of people come in on 1-2 user accounts to start with, and we'll obviously look at expanding those over time. Most average customer is a few $1,000s, so they're not big customers. There's a high velocity motion, and then we're getting a number of accounts, probably half a dozen, maybe more, a dozen or so now every month. They're getting to the 50, 100K sort of deals that are coming in, or tend to sort of 50K deals, and then a few bigger ones. So a lot of very, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 deals that just keep ticking in, and then our outbound motion is going after the larger accounts of 5 to 25 salespeople.
And then one topic I know you're very passionate about because we've talked a lot about it. But how do you balance? So Aconex was very sales led.
Yep.
The product, you couldn't really trial the product, whereas modern selling is much more product led. Reducing friction. How do you think about the balance between letting the product do the heavy lifting versus, having a sales force that's actually helping people engage?
Well, I think the very first thing with any product-led growth approach, you've got to have a great product. So I think we've done that and we build a lot around that. And then how it feeds then through with our marketing funnel. So we've obviously got a demand generation funnel that brings people into the product. And then the ability to trial Firmable really easily. So you get on a 2-week trial, free 2-week trial, so people can touch and feel and use the product and do that immediately. So that's something, a low friction sale from that point of view. And then we bring in the sales team to support that. So the minute somebody's engaged with the product, we'll then obviously get in touch with them and look to convert that opportunity. And then on the outbound, slightly different, where we'll actually go after people. And of course, we've got Australia's highest quality data set to mine. So we've got great details about our ICP, the types of customers we're selling to, the person, so the role, their contact details, and then our signals engine. And we, of course, get to use our own product, so drink our own champagne, that we're using our signals product to work out when the best time to get in touch is.
Yeah, so, and I guess that's, and obviously I share this conviction, but it feels like for Firmable, that's a big bet, signals. And so talk us through how you think, what do you mean by signals, I guess, to start with? And then how do you think that's going to shape how salespeople kind of operate?
Yeah. So signals, the way we think about it, it's an event or something that's happening in an account. So say you've got, whether it's a prospect or an account or a person, something has changed for them. So that might be that they've hired somebody new into their team, they've moved job, they've announced a new product, say from social signals. So we're pulling in 60 to 70 different signal types and then mapping that into all of our accounts, so all of the records on Firmable, so that our sales team can say, well, I'm going to get customer A, B, and C. When is the best time to get in touch with them? So it might be that I'm selling HR software and I know when the head of HR's changed. So you can see when that role has changed. So really, it's finding the best time to get in touch with the customer. So it's not just about knowing who you're selling to and the role, which that's, of course, incredibly valuable, and having phone numbers is really important, but being able to reach out to that person at the right time when they're looking for something or have a need that hasn't been met. So the signal really gives you the right moments to get in touch. So smarter data, rather than giving you a data set, is giving you smarter data, more precision data that you can get in touch with people.
Yeah, okay. Which I guess is a very natural. So AI, of course, is changing the world of selling, I guess, or selling and go to market. We were through blind dumb luck, I think. We're pretty fortunate that ChatGPT kind of arrived in our world about 3 months after we launched. So we're kind of AI native from the get-go. How has the rise of AI, I guess, shaped the product, but also how we think about what's the tool, and how that will work for a salesperson?
I think the first thing AI, or thinking about data, so pre anything to do with ChatGPT, I think we always would have had a machine learning approach, which would have been cool back then. But what allowed us to do, and what the rise of LLMs has allowed us to do, is to process data way more efficiently than we could have done it a year or two earlier. So right time, right place, a bit of dumb luck, as you say, that all of a sudden the way that we were going to assemble data was massively accelerated, so we could assemble not just cheaper, but also a high quality data set for a market like Australia. That's the first thing. So, and using LLMs, not as a data source, because you can't necessarily trust it for data, but as a processing tool to assemble, categorize, match all the data that we pull together. Then the second thing is from the point of view of a salesperson saying, how does AI help me day to day? So if you're an SDR without any tools, you might spend half your time researching. So we can do a lot of that on an automated basis for our users. So really, what are the AI tools that we can then put in front of the salesperson to help them augment and become more capable? And ultimately, if we can make every salesperson that uses Firmable way more successful, make them awesome, then we're doing our job.
So does AI replace a salesperson?
I don't think so. But maybe I'm old school sales. I started a long time ago. But I genuinely believe that. I think most people want to buy from a person. And I think most people will respond better to a person in that sales process. But that doesn't mean the salesperson should be doing all the boring hard work. So we just say, well, let our product do all the grunt work so the salesperson can take the glory in the sense and but they can be awesome with their AI sales mate, sidekick, co-pilot, whatever you want to call it, sitting beside them doing the grunt work.
I love that kind of concept of making the salesperson awesome, and that's something that we talk a lot about internally. So, I guess the vision for Firmable, it's for salespeople, not engineers. So I guess, firstly, what do you mean when you say that, and how will Firmable make a salesperson awesome?
Yeah, so we think it should be so easy to use that you can get onto the product and it helps you do everything. So you don't need to assemble 15 different workflows. You don't need to think about your process. That we know how people sell, and we know how a particular company is selling. We know what their ICP is. We know the types of people they're speaking to. So we can help guide our salespeople through the product. So our tool is acting as that sidekick, that guide for them through the product. But they don't need to spend endless hours configuring the product, working out all the minute details. We do that for our customers and making it super easy for. I mean, the reality is most salespeople do not want to do that. That's not they didn't learn how to code. They shouldn't have to code in a product. They should be able to get in there, use it. Let's just say the product. This is my ICP. Tell me who's next for me to sell to. So when they come into work in the morning, the product can literally say to them, "Here's the next best person for you to call."
Okay. And so how do you know? So I love this makes salespeople awesome. But how do you measure that? Like, how do we know when we've done it?
Well, people are buying our product. That's one good thing. But
so
I mean, we'd love it. Yeah, we'd love it. I mean, love to be able to see that the salespeople using Firmable are the most successful salespeople in the market. I don't know how we'd ever test that, but if you could run a control group of people not using Firmable, but I think the reality is if we help salespeople love their job. I mean, we love salespeople. We all came from we've all been in sales. We've essentially all been, had a sales background. But the fact that we actually want to lean in and support what should really be a profession, but really support it to be successful in the same way that, well, a good example, say Heidi, which is one of our investee companies, they're helping GPs with their, as a GP scribe, notes, taking notes on a consultation. So they're taking the boring work away from the GP. We want to take the boring work away from the salesperson and really make them successful.
So to ask a slightly philosophical question, why isn't sales considered a profession? Like why don't we embrace it as a profession?
We should. I mean, I think there's no sales degree. That's probably one thing that most things we think of as a profession you go through, whether it's engineering or law or whatever. But the reality is salespeople come from all different university degrees, all different professions. Some people haven't been to university. So there's all different walks of life, all different experiences that lead to sales. So I think that's one reason. But ultimately, I think it's a profession as much as anything else. That the very best salespeople I've worked with saw it as a profession and they honed their skills. They were continually learning. They were curious about how to be better salespeople. And some of the best ones I worked with taught me to be a better salesperson.
Yeah, okay. And so looking forward, so we've talked a lot about what Firmable's doing. So what do you think, what will be the biggest shifts in go-to-market and sales over the next few years? Like what do you see kind of that's either already here or is coming? Like what are the things we're going to be talking about?
Well, I think we'll shift back, and it's partly what we've been talking about from 5 years ago as salespeople, it was your CRM, a few tools. Then AI comes along, and then all of a sudden everybody's saying, well, salespeople will be replaced by AI. And I think what we'll see is that intersection of salespeople, so real people with AI augmenting what they're doing. And I think the tools that can best make a salesperson, a real person successful will be the ones that are there in the future. I think some of the tools that we use today that are hard to use, workflow-oriented tools will disappear. I mean, with all due respect to the CRMs out there that we know and love and work alongside, no salesperson in the world loves entering data into a CRM.
Probably true.
So I would say when we're successful is when people go, Firmable is the product I just cannot possibly do without. So if a salesperson loves us more than any other tool, then I think we're won.
Okay. And so 2026 is going to be a big year for Firmable. Lot going on, a bunch of exciting stuff planned on the product side, a launch into Southeast Asia. We're growing our Australian team super rapidly to kind of keep up with the demand from our kind of ANZ customer base. What, I guess at a personal level, when you're sitting on the beach over January, having a bit of a reflect on life, what do you think you'll be most excited about in 2026?
I think it's, I'll come back to the product, but I think going multi-regional. So we've proven a model that works really well in Australia. We've done New Zealand. Now we're doing Southeast Asia. So there's multiple markets there. So we're doing half a dozen, 7 or 8 countries as part of that. And then we're also going to be doing North America this year. So that's a big step out into multiple markets. And we won't stop there. I think we can be...
I'm a little weary just...
a little weary thinking about it. But, that's... Well, in a sense, that's... Yeah, we've done it before with Aconex. It'll be obviously a different path this time. But we think we've got the best product in the world, the best combination of data quality with product that we can take out into other markets. And on the product side, I think, is this precision around our signals. So we're adding more signal sources. So, for example, intent was added during the year. We're doing a lot of precision signals off the back of things like social media. So we can just keep aggregating more and more different data sources and giving signals that people have never had before. So this is a part of the product, I think, that will be something that hasn't been done in the market to that level of specificity before.
And now, I'm not the most complimentary co-founder, as in complimentary to my co-founders. But one thing I must say about you, Leigh, is the thing that I think you have taught me more than anything else is why not us? Yep. So, and I think, you hear that when you talk about the opportunity and how the passion and the enthusiasm you have for the business. So I think that's a rare trait in a leader. So that's the nice thing I'm going to say about you for 2025.
Yes, well, we've got a lot to do, but we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so enough of that. So some closing rapid-fire questions. So who was the most influential person in your sales journey and why?
People that know the Aconex journey will laugh at this, but Andrew Calander. So yes. The very quick story, Swedish guy turns up in Australia, has immigrated and says, I should join your team. Turns up in sandals for his interview, with socks, sandals and socks, very Swedish, but ends up teaching me a huge amount about sales. And just one quick little sort of vignette of that. We're selling to our biggest customer ever for Aconex, our first multi-billion-dollar project as a Venetian in Macau. And I'm selling, I love our product and how we're going to help the customer. Sales going well, and I just keep banging on. And eventually I get this little note from Andrew, stop selling. So just knowing when you've sold the deal, close it, move on.
Good, valuable life advice that I think. Know when to stop selling. All right, so common mistake you see salespeople make, and what would you do to avoid it?
Not stopping selling. I think I think there's continual learning. So I think some salespeople just don't keep honing their skills and keeping up with the changes in tools. I think that's the other thing for salespeople.
Yeah, okay. One book, tool or resource you swear by?
Getting enough sleep. So I do read a lot, but lots of good books.
Why do you say sleep? Why? I'm curious.
I think you need to be at your best when you come into work, and particularly, so it's interesting, a lot of things you might get nervous in a meeting, but I still get a little bit of an adrenaline rush on a sale. So I think, and depending on the size and the customer, all that sort of thing, but this ability to be at your best when you've got to go out and perform. Like, as a sports person, you want to sleep before you get out into the middle in a cricket match, before you swing that golf club. And I think it's the same in any profession. Sales possibly more so than ever because you have moments you have to be great at.
So as I wrote the intro, I had you described as a veteran. I scrubbed that out. So. No, but
a young veteran.
A young veteran, pioneer. I guess looking back at the young Leigh Jasper, when the young Leigh Jasper was starting out on the journey, what would you tell that person?
I think I was very naive, but that was probably helpful. It's sort of obvious, but build great teams around you. I think, but from a sales point of view, if I just go straight into sales, it's just the cadence and the discipline of the best salespeople don't just learn how to sell well in the moment, but also the discipline around running their processes and
the system and
the system. So that can be it's not just at the team level, it's also at the individual level. So great sales teams have that discipline across the team, and great sales individuals plug into that, but also have their own disciplines in how they manage their day, manage where they're spending their time. There's only one thing you can't get more of, and that's time. So the best salespeople use their time very well.
So final question, what is the big trend, kind of in our space, in the Firmable space, in the sales intelligence space, that everyone should be watching out for?
I think it's signals. And what I mean by signals, it's not just signals as they've been in the past, but it's the ability to have way more signals than ever, but the ability to only get the ones that matter to you. So there's a sense of being able to take thousands and thousands of possible signals, and through what we're doing with AI, really give the right signal to a salesperson to enable them to close a deal.
Awesome. Well, I think we've made it through the first episode.
Without stumbling too much.
So, no, in all seriousness, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for all you've done for Firmable. And I'm very excited by the team we have, and also working with you day to day. So here's to an exciting 2026.
And I look forward to learning from all the future podcasts. And if there's one thing to give Paul a compliment, there's nobody that you're going to learn more from in terms of how to manage sales processes, build a team, build everything you need to around a go-to-market function. So I look forward to continually learning.
Excellent. Very good. All right. Thanks, Leigh.
Thanks, Paul.